Ronin. We love stories.
Okay, so now I think we arrived at your writing. What you do for a living nowadays. Your first novel was Ralph's Party, to my knowledge. That was published 25 years ago.
It was.
When was the first time you actually thought about starting writing?
I wanted to be a journalist when I was a kid, but my life took me on a different journey. I stopped reading when I was a teenager, and I started reading again in my early 20s. And I do remember thinking then that I feel like there's a voice missing in everything that I'm reading. And I feel like it's a young woman's voice. And this was before Bridget Jones and before what happened in the late 90s and early noughties with this big chick lit explosion. There just weren't any young women writing books at that point. It was very, very heavyweight literary stuff or crime or whatever. So that was the first moment where I thought, I would really, really love to add my voice to the world. I would love to write a book about my experience of existing in this world as a young woman. But it didn't actually happen until I was in my mid-20s, when I got very drunk one night with a female friend and told her that I had this little fantasy about writing a novel. Then I also told her all the reasons why I couldn't write a novel, because I didn't have time mainly. And she said, well, you don't have to write a whole novel. Just try writing 3 chapters. And she said, I'll tell you what, if you write 3 chapters of a novel, I'll take you out for dinner to your favorite restaurant. And so we shook hands at 4 a.m. and I did it because I am a woman of my word. So yeah, I went home. We were on holiday when we had that conversation. I got back to London and I wrote those 3 chapters and I showed them to her and she said they were brilliant and I should send them out to some agents. And one of the agents I sent it out to took it on and got me a publishing deal. I'm not one of those writers who spent a long, yearning part of my life dreaming about writing a novel. It was something that was ticking away in the background and it just somehow came straight to the foreground during that conversation with my friend. And I to wonder to this day, if I hadn't had that moment in my life, if I hadn't had that conversation, if I hadn't had so much to drink that night and I hadn't had that conversation with that particular person who gave me the key to the door to do it, whether I'd have written a book or not, I don't know. And we'll never know. But thank God that happened for me.
Well, sometimes all it takes is a couple of beers, I would say.
Absolutely. Yes. And a supportive friend.
Well, since 1999, I think, when it was published, you published like almost 1 book every year. That's quite impressive, also very successfully. What does your creative process, writing a book, look like?
So actually, when I think about writing a book a year over most of my career, and you say that's impressive, I actually look back at earlier points in my career when I had 2 tiny children. And I'm really impressed with that person. I do not know how that person managed to write a book every year on top of, doing all the childcare. I don't know how that happened. It's all a blur, actually. It feels less impressive for me at this point in my life because my children are grown and I have, essentially I have my life back in order just to focus on being an author and prioritize writing. So it doesn't feel like such a big stretch to publish a book every year. I just think, well, I've got nothing else to do. Walk the dog, write the book. That's all I have to do. So yes, at this point in my life, it's my priority. It's totally and utterly my job, not something I'm trying to squeeze in between everything else. And my creative process looks like, it's really nice having a book a year contract because you know exactly what you need to be doing at every point in the year. And there's no slack built in. Well, there's a few, you get a couple of weeks here and there where you're waiting for feedback and you can relax. But most of the time there's no slack built in. And that's good for me because I'm not a naturally disciplined person. So I need to know that certain things have to happen at a certain point. I would normally deliver my current book, my finished work, in July, maybe early August. Then I would spend 2 months editing that. And then I would start writing my next book in October with, again, a delivery date of the following July. So that's the rhythm of things. I'm not one of those writers who has many, many ideas. I don't have any. I have one idea every year, and I know what it is. The minute it arrives, I feel it in my gut. I just think, okay, that's my next book. I don't know what it's going to be yet, but I know it's going to be about that. That's how it starts. Yeah. So then when day 0 arrives, type in chapter 1. I know what my first chapter is going to be, but I don't know anything else beyond that. I literally have no idea. I have a sense of a setting. I have a sense of a feeling. I have a sense of what the peril might be, but I'm not quite sure what it is yet. I'm not quite sure who my goodies are or my baddies are. I've usually at that point only got one character, and I have to wait. I have to write into that character's world before I can introduce another character, and I'll get to a point and think, we need to hear from the detective, or we need to hear from the child, or we need to, and then I will bring the other characters in. So it's incredibly organic, and it would be stressful if it wasn't for the fact I've done it like this so many times. So I know it always works out, and I just have to have faith, trust the process, as they say. So then complete a first draft in, shall we say, 8 to 9 months, deliver it to my editor and wait for her feedback. And that's it. And so it goes on year after year.
You took my next question from me because I was about to ask if you are plotting everything out.
No, the opposite. It's a pure opposite of plotting. I love coming to my work every day and not really knowing what's going to happen. I'll come to my work and I'll think, okay, I know that today I have to write a scene where character A meets character B, and character B is going to tell character A something really interesting or something that moves the plot on, but I don't know what it is. And I have to set the scene up and put character A and character B in a scenario together and get them talking and somehow manipulate the conversation to get to a point where character B tells the character A the thing. And I don't know what it is. And I'm sitting there with my fingertips over my laptop, over my keyboard, thinking, what's it going to be? What's he going to tell her? And then it will come. And then the story moves along again. So the plot is happening as I'm typing. It's nowhere else. It doesn't exist anywhere. It's very occasionally I will come to my laptop with the whole chapter in mind. And I will think, okay, character A is going to meet character B and tell them this thing, and I know what it's going to be. But more often than not, I don't know what character A is going to tell character B until I'm in the moment of putting the words into the character's mouth. So, yeah, I'm the opposite of a plotter. And it should be scary, but it's not. It isn't scary. And I used to find it scary. I used to think there must be a better way of doing this. And I tried being a plotter, and it just freaked me out. I just thought, how the hell am I supposed to know? How am I supposed to know what happens? I don't understand how I'm supposed to know what happens in my own book. So I just went back to basics and thought, no, this is how I write. Accept it, love it. Yeah, it is how I write, and I enjoy it now.
We talked about your process of writing. Let's talk about a little bit about your characters. They're like an integral part of your writing, and I think your fans love you for your characters especially, because they feel real, they feel like everyday characters, like we could know them in our everyday lives. How do you come up with those characters?
Yeah, again, it's I start a book with a character in mind. So, for example, the book I'm writing at the moment is in fact a character who plays a small role in the book that is coming out in Germany next year called Don't Let Him In. And I loved her, and I thought I want to write a book about her. So I had her, and because I'd already written about her a little bit, she was already quite well formed before I hit the keyboard with her. But it's just this sort of instinctive feeling of who needs to come into the story next. And I make those choices not with my intellect, not with a plan, just with a feeling like I really, really would love to hear this story or see the background of this story, or go back in time 5 years, 10 years and find out more about this character who has something to do with the story, the current story. I suppose what I'm trying to say is I only bring them into the story because I really want to write about them, because they interest me, because there's something about them that attracts me. So that makes it easy for me to give that character life on the page because I've chosen them, or they've chosen me. I don't know, but I've chosen them because they are attractive in some way, not just because they perform a function. And there's a scattering throughout my books of characters that I did write about to perform a function, and they're my least favorite characters.
Could you give an example for a character like this?
Yeah, I can give you a very good example, and a lot of readers would disagree because they really liked this character, which was Libby from The Family Upstairs. So Libby is the character who at the very beginning of the book is told that she's inherited this mansion in Chelsea and it belonged to her birth family. She was adopted as a 10-month-old baby and she doesn't know anything about her birth family. And she finds out that some very, very dark things happened in the house where she was born. And she was actually found there alone and taken away by the police after an anonymous phone call. So her backstory is fascinating, but her function in the book, I wasn't that interested in. I just wanted her to find out things. I wasn't really terribly interested in who she was as a person or what made her tick. I just wanted her to walk around the plot and walk around the characters and get inside that house and find out the secrets. I don't know. I just didn't feel anything for her. But some readers really liked her. She's a very sweet girl.
And do you draw inspiration from real life characters, like characters in your life, people you know?
Oh, no, I have done it subconsciously a couple of times and not realised I was doing it until I was doing it. There's an example, actually. I wrote a book called Invisible Girl, and the main character is a middle-aged woman and she has a teenage daughter who's 15 and she's called Georgia. And she's sort of a slightly subsidiary character. She doesn't really have much to do with the action. But she's quite a larger-than-life character. And I realised as I was writing her that she was my daughter, who was also 15 at the time. And all her obsessions were the same as my daughter's obsessions, and her energy was the same as my daughter's energy. And I just thought, okay, this is happening. Let's just go with it. Let's just carry on. I know exactly who she is. I started writing her as a fictional character, but actually she's my daughter, so I may as well just carry on making her my daughter. So every now and then it will happen, and it's subconscious, but usually for me, the joy, the delight, the satisfaction in writing is making people up. Just inventing people and bringing them to life. You don't know anything about them until you start writing them, and then you get to fill in all the gaps and give them layers. And that for me is the joy.